Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. This is your inside track to success. As always, I am your host, Stuart Cranes. We have another amazing guest for you this week. But again, before I introduce him, please subscribe. Please give us a 5-star review, particularly if you're listening to this on Spotify. It just helps the show become more relevant in the search function so other people can learn from the guests that we have on the show. Don't want to waste any more time for y'all, though. We got an awesome guest. He is a board certified counselor, psychoanalyst, also certified in the Myers-Briggs personality type test, and has recently been a TEDx speaker with a talk entitled Active Hope. And given the state of the world, I absolutely wanted to have him on the show. It just felt like absolute perfect timing. So without further ado, I want to welcome Brian Nandy on the show. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Thank you so much for having me, Stu. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy person with the clients that you have. I would love for you to maybe kick off this call. How did you get into the world of counseling, and how did this become your calling?
Beautiful. At at 15 years old, there was an English debate in school. I come from Malaysia, and so we speak Malay. And so for English week, we had to pick a topic. And I happened to come across a topic on the lasting wounds of divorces. It was a time when my parents were having an argument. We were poor and they were having financial problems, but I've never heard them prior to that argue except for that stage of my life. And one day I heard the word divorce.
Oh, wow.
And it was so scary from what I understand from TV, but to actually hear it and be in it, it really shook me to the core. And then, and just so happened, there was a magazine, and my parents were avid readers, and there was an article about the lasting wounds of divorces. And I read the article, and in that article was advice of what, in regards to what parents can do and what the children go through and all that. And there was a profession in there that I didn't know how to pronounce. It was psychologist. I didn't know that the P was silent at that time. And then and just reading what this psychologist had done, the advice, and I knew at that moment it was like such enlightenment that that's what I wanted to do and be. It was going to be my future. But no one really knew what that was at that time in the 80s, and especially in Malaysia, where we don't have mental issues. And so that interest was so strong, but it was kind of just in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do. But growing up in Malaysia, there were things that we were meant to do. We were all going to become doctors. We were all going to become architects and lawyers. Those were the options. And so, I studied. It was this secret dream, or it was just simply a desire, a fantasy, like how awesome it is to be a psychologist someday. And in Malaysia, we have, for our universities at that time, we only had 7 universities, and you had to take this exam at high school. And if you pass it, then you get into it. But there were so many of us who did well that it was a lottery system. And I didn't
Wow.
get that lottery. I didn't get into it. So there was a lot of shame that came with it in Malaysia. And so, there were only an allotment of, like, let's say 10 million seats. 7 million seats, and there were 10 million students, and we all got A's. Like, what do you do then?
Mhm.
So it's all about having A's, like 10 A's. So if you got 3 A's, then it was easier. You're out. So when I did not get to be that, then I had to start working. I worked in a boutique. I worked in a little gym for kids. I became a singer. I was When I got my results, it was so shameful. I decided to run away from home. But the way I ran away from home was kind of calculated. I worked for Club Med, which is a resort. I used to sing in my younger days as a cantor. I wanted to be Michael Jackson. But obviously, that's an artistic dream, and that doesn't fall into the criteria of being a physician, an accountant, or a lawyer. And I got to live on the resort. I got to sing. I met people from all around the world. And there my hopes and dreams continue to, to I guess grow. Like, what is it that I want to do now that I can't be a doctor, lawyer, or architect? And then I was invited to become. I laughed because I got some scholarships. My mom and dad had asked me to apply to some universities in Australia, and I did get into a business program to eventually become an accountant. But when the time came, I just couldn't do it. And I said no. I declined the offer, like all ready to fly. My parents were so disappointed. And so, in the process of not wanting to cause shame, I caused shame. Because we are very much valued at, how our worth is defined by our grades in Asia. It may be changing now, but that was not the time. It's not really. It's still, we are very much defined by our grades and how well we do. And so I was invited to become a writer because I spoke English. In Malaysia, I went to Catholic school, so I spoke English and all that. And I became a copywriter for an advertising agency. And when I was there, I had gone to, I said, okay, so in that case, let me get my degree in communication. And then just one more credit, one more class to get my degree. I was already in my internship to complete. I get this offer to come to America. I applied, met a friend of mine, and it's like, come to America, come, apply to this school and you'll get a scholarship. I was thinking, this might be the way to become a psych. I applied and I got it. Blackburn College. I will forever be grateful to that little college in Carlinville, Illinois,
Love it.
for giving me the opportunity to come to America. Offered me a scholarship so that I could go to school. So I made quite a bit of money when I was in advertising because apparently I had some creativity in me. And I saved that money and I came to America. And I was very, very determined because now I got to become a psychologist in my mind. But I still had to lie. I lied to my parents and said I was going to do business administration.
Wow.
I came here and then I changed my major to psychology, but I couldn't tell them the truth. So I told them I was majoring in consumer behavior. Right? Because it's psychological. They couldn't even remember what it was. All they knew was like, okay, it's business related, so all right, and that's how I got into this. But so long story longer, witnessing my parents' first set of arguments and reading that article about psychologist sparked a profession that just resonated with me, and I kept dreaming about it over the years. It wasn't such a this is who I'm going to be, because it wasn't, in a Malaysian way of thinking, that's not what you're going to be. What is that anyways, and so it was just sort of a daydream. And so for me, to anyone I speak to, dreams do come true, because that was a desire, a hope, a vision that had no resistance. It was simply a wish that I kept wishing again and again with no resistance. There was no disappointment either, because there was an acceptance that that's not something in my tangible, immediate reality.
Mhm.
That was just fantasy, like all the programs that we watch on TV, that American shows, Knight Rider, you know, so Dynasty, etc. So they were just simply fantasies because they were dreams. The reality was that. So dreams do come true. They were, and wishes, hopes, prayer are in the part of our brain that give us hope, that keep hopes, dreams are in the part of our brain, right, that give us attention. So what we focus on, what we pay attention to is really important. When we are worried, we focus on what worries us. Hence the
Yeah.
concept, like we create our own reality. Because the
Yeah.
brain doesn't know good or bad. All it knows is that you're paying attention to that, so you must be really interested in that topic.
Can I jump in here, Brian? Like
Yes.
everything you have shared already is just mind blowing. Just everything that you overcame to get where you are now and to accomplish everything that you have. You hit on a few things that I want to kind of put a magnifying glass over,
Oh,
though, if you don't mind.
yeah.
I think the one I want to start with, you had your goal, you had your dream of becoming a therapist, becoming a psychologist, helping people in this way. You also had, some of the cultural conditioning, but also just the approval of your parents to overcome, which I want to acknowledge you that it took, I would imagine, a lot of courage to plant your flag on your goal and your dream and keep doing the things necessary to make it happen. Can you speak into that journey a bit more, which is in some cases going behind your parents' back to make the dream a reality?
Because they themselves defied cultural norms. My
Mm,
father is Indian and my mother is Chinese. And in
wow.
that time, it was like, where a black could not be with a white person. But they fell in love. It was love at first sight.
Mm,
And they got married. No one came to their wedding.
wow.
They were both teachers, and their peers came to their wedding. So just being biracial in Malaysia and just having, parents who were of different, we had to live a life that defied cultural norms. My
Wow.
parents, who were intellects, were creative, learned people. Um, they were flower power people without having the flower power experience. And so they raised four children who are very defiant. I feel really bad for them in reflection, like what tough kids we were. They taught us to think outside the box. And then we defied a lot of what they said. And so that's where that sort of defiance came from. I knew to the core of my heart. This calling was so strong. I could not disobey it.
Mhm.
And because I had gone through being poor, I knew how to be poor. I knew how to just live on ramen noodles. One ramen noodle, break it in half, one for lunch, one for dinner. Hunger was not a fear. I was never hungry, by the way, but I knew how to do that. But living in abundance was something that was unfamiliar. But I knew that that was my pursuit. So it's really mindful, right? We can either perpetuate a lacking mindset and create lacking in our lives, or we use that as a way to pivot towards the version that we want to become. And because I am an envisioner in the creative aspect of my persona, as I've learned over the years about myself, I am very much driven by vision. And I've had the evidence of dreams that do come true. Every dream that I've ever wanted to have come true. I've had, like,
Wow.
so to speak, 3 vision boards, and they've all come true.
I love that.
And my vision boards are very different, right? It's not, depending on what we want. But there were some just very basic experiences I wanted to have in my life. And they've all come true, even falling in love and having a partner, a home by the ocean, a car that I've wanted. When I first came to America in my first year in that winter, I'd gone to work in Florida. I saw this car, a BMW Z3. I was like, on earth is this car? It's so creative. It looked like a shark. It had gills on the side. And that was in 1996. And exactly, I think about, I guess, 15 years later, I got my BMW Z4. It wasn't even what I wanted, but I got taxed by the IRS so much. And here I was like saving money.
Mhm.
I got taxed. I was like, what the frig am I doing saving money? I got my BMW. I was like, I'm going to go for that thing. So again, out of anger and defiance, I got what I wanted. So I guess for the version of me and for all of us who have our safeguards when we live within a framework of what we consider safety, sometimes we've got to break our belief systems to be able to experience joy, expansion. It's
Yeah.
that door in Chinese. You don't know what's on the other side of that door if you don't open it.
Mm-mm.
You just got to open it. It doesn't mean you got to step in it. The wisdom of one of my patients in regards to what we step into and what we don't step into. And so this is how she frames it. So, Brian, what you're telling me is when I see shit, I don't have to step in shit. I know it's shitty. Right? So it's the same thing. Some things we know, some we don't know. But when we don't open the door and see if there's a shitty situation or not, but that requires a little bit of data collection. Sometimes we need concrete data, and sometimes we need pattern recognition data. For instance, if we are getting to know people, we don't know if we can trust them or not, right? Initially, who can you trust? Who can you not? But as time go on and you get to know people, we will observe certain consistencies in our humanity. And that consistency allows us to trust, to connect, that
Yeah.
out of connection. So for me, I had enough defiance because I was such an obedient Catholic boy, oldest
Mhm.
child with the oldest child neurosis of being an overachiever, doing the right thing, that doing the right thing didn't necessarily got me to the university. Biracial kids in Malaysia, it's hard to tell because I look Indian, very much Indian, but in Malaysia, they can kind of tell the difference. Being biracial in Malaysia are considered different, but they're normally the top students in the university, in schools. There's something about the mixture in our biology, I guess. Whatever the stereotype is, I don't know if there's a real evidence of that. But there comes a certain stereotype that you are different and therefore you should excel, right? You will accept.
Interesting.
So I had that pressure, like reverse pressure, that we all should be good at math. I can't do math. And my father was a mathematician. so so I was like a disappointment in so many ways that I was like, okay, whatever, you go and do the next thing. But shame or disappointment, thankfully I had my mom. My mom is one, is where all four of us, or my siblings, we all learned tenacity, resiliency from my mom. My mom is a hopelessly optimistic angel
Mhm.
because my dad came from a wealthy family and my mom came from a poverty-stricken family. My mom is biracial herself. She's half Chinese, half white. And during the British occupation, I mean, my grandma was half Chinese, half white. So she had that unfortunate situation where there was World War II, they had nothing and they had to build themselves up, and they live, you hear stories of people having to cut firewood and clean wash clothes by the river, and you have to go to an outhouse and learn and do your homework by a candle. That was the story of my mom. But at
Wow.
7 years old, she knew that, I mean, this is such wisdom, okay? At 7 years old, she knew that this wasn't her life. She wasn't thinking about playing dolls. At 7 years old, she said, this is not going to be my life. I'm going to figure out what is it that I need to do. And so she's taught us that. She knew how to be poor. So in the 80s, we were taught resiliency through my mom. So she really is the original gangster practitioner in my life of active hope.
I
You
love
can't.
that.
Mm-hmm. I will attribute it to her. My dad was wealthy, so he didn't quite have the coping skills, but he learned it from her.
Wow. What an awesome role model to have at such a young age. And Brian, I've heard you say basically through your story that how you got to where you are, how you've created the life of your dreams has been through almost being too stubborn to quit, right? Like
Oh,
and I'm wondering if you could just in the broader sense for the folks listening speak into what it takes to maintain that level of hope
mhm,
and keep pursuing a goal or a dream when
mhm.
the odds feel stacked against you, when circumstances keep happening, so on and so forth.
For me, right to that, when our critical voice and our hopelessness kick in, I have a certain process that I've done for myself. I try and teach that to the patients, and that is to empathize.
Mhm.
First, acknowledge the circumstance. This totally sucks. then empathize, appreciate, and empower.
So what does
So
that look like?
So that looks like when I'm so nervous, I'm doubt, will I get my green card? I'm going to be kicked out of this beautiful country. September 11 has happened. Will I be able to live here? I want to live in this country. I want to continue to live my vocation.
Mhm.
And I'm nervous and I don't know. And then so the parent in us, the nurturer in us has to kick in. I know this sucks. This is worrying. So you don't want to ignore it. You want to acknowledge it because we don't want to go into denial. What we repress will express. We've got to deny a little bit of a healthy dose of acknowledgement. This totally sucks. I know this hurts you. You are frightened. And then you go into appreciation, which is to recognize all that is good and gifted about you. And that aspect is really important. It helps us build confidence. Confidence is an outcome of knowing that we are worthy, that there's something valuable about us. And not valuable to the standards of the world, perhaps, but it's meaningful and we've received some good feedback. When in doubt, as part of my knowing is I'm a singer. I could have
Mhm.
become a singer. People have, agents or whatever called scouts and all that have like asked me to become a singer. Like, you're wasting your time. Let's make you famous in New York City. I'm like, no, this is what I meant to do, right? And so, but just knowing that that I've been acknowledged for my singing, I made money, sing. So, and that might not seem like a valuable thing. So, sing. So what you gonna do about that? But it helps you recognize some good parts, and you take what is easier to get to. Oh, I'm a good son then. I'm resilient. I don't want my parents to worry, so I've not told them about my concerns. My friends have told me that I'm a good friend. I've got all A's. I'm a 4.0. So, whatever you can reach into the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and you want to keep building on that appreciation. Okay. It's to function as a mood stabilizer. Appreciation is hard. When we're negative, we're feeling in a bad way. It's so hard to just suddenly become positive. So the practice of gratitude that's become really big is to kind of help us stabilize that need to look at what we do have versus what we don't have. It's to come out of that space of lacking. So after you've done that and you feel like you're okay, enough space, then sort of come in. So the appreciative, the nurturing, sort of the mother in us. And then the father in us, the father figure in us comes in. For those of us who don't have father figures, you become the father to yourself. Okay, and that is the empowering aspect. What's the next empowering thing to do? And it can even be what's the next loving thing to do, which is the actionable aspect of hopes and dreams. What is one small thing that you can do right now to make you feel better, to come out of the vortex of negativity, helplessness, and hopelessness? And that question, what's the next active thing you can do? What's the next hopeful thing you can do? Is the aspect of active hope.
Hey guys, it's your host, Stuart Cranes, taking a quick break from this week's episode to let you know about a really amazing opportunity to get coaching from yours truly. This upcoming Wednesday, November 8th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, my wife, Jennifer, and I are putting on a free workshop for anybody that may have had a big goal going into 2023 and just hasn't had the opportunity to pull the trigger. We all know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world today with the economy, the rise of artificial intelligence, international relations are at an unrest. And with the amount of things that have been happening, we may have lost sight of our goals. We may have lost sight of our dreams, may have just lost the momentum. And this opportunity is for you to get coaching, receive the motivation, the tools, the tips, the insights to get back in the game to make 2024 the year that you finally create that result. How would it feel to finally lose that weight or to write that book or to find the job of your dreams? Whatever the goal may be, this is your opportunity to learn from two ICF trained coaches. And additionally, as a bonus, anybody who signs up to attend this free workshop is going to get the opportunity to book a free 30-minute coaching call with either Jennifer or myself. Again, all of these are free to you just for signing up. All of it is done in the service of making sure that you live your best life and that 2024 is the year that finally you create that big result in your life. Now let's get back to the show. So what I appreciate about this, Brian, is you're both making space for the feelings.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, your circumstances suck. Like, they are awful. This is not what you want. There's a lot of fear here in the moment. And you're using that by acknowledging the feelings, making space for them, allowing yourself to get regrounded in the present to then be like, okay, what's the next step to take?
Mhm.
You know, I'm really appreciative that you said that, because I feel like in American society, a lot of Western society, it's this very, you know, masculine, like,
Mhm.
pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Feelings are something we don't have time for. Go, 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 do, trample the weak, hurdle the dead, that type of thinking. And, you know, as an American male myself, I definitely grew up with a lot of that messaging, and it just hasn't served me over and over and over again. And I've flamed out of career paths that were very much that energy. I've lost relationships that were very much that energy, because that's just not who I am. And I would love your thoughts on, you know, speaking about vocations,
Mhm.
speaking about goals, speaking about relationships. How do you create the both and? How do your patients create the both and in a society that's driving from such a heavy masculine place?
Mhm. Yeah. When you can't control the external,
Mhm.
we can't control the external, right? The concept called external locus of control, internal locus of control. When they've come to me at this point, they have lost all control of the external world. It doesn't serve them, and they're being injured by it.
Mhm.
And so when they've come to me at this point, it's like what we can control are your feelings, your thoughts, and more importantly, your belief systems. So part of psychotherapy, at least in my modality, is how do we align your belief systems, healthier belief systems, to the vision of the healthier, happier, worthy, successful, purposeful version of you. So when they come in, I do the Myers-Briggs assessment. Immediately, I'm able to identify the inherent character strengths of the patient. This is your wiring. And every wiring has good and bad. Hope is amazing, but blind hope can be misleading. If you are staying in an abusive relationship and thinking and only hoping for the potential of the individual to emerge and change at some point, meanwhile you're being bashed, no, that's blind hope. There's no activeness in it. There is no progression. So some reality checking is also important, especially when the negative circumstances get out of the vortex, right? So for them, right, in that space of how to defy it, you know, there is no work that can be done until a person feels that they are capable. And so psychotherapy, even though there's like treatment plans or whatever, no patient is going to run out, start journaling or whatever if they don't feel good about themselves. And essentially, we've got to work on their self-esteem.
How do we do that? How does one start from
For
that
me,
place?
I immediately use the Myers-Briggs. But essentially, how we do that is to what I would call character analysis. Whatever we know about the person that is good, lovely, gentle, beautiful, significant, we point that out like a broken record. For any of us to change who we want to be, I don't want to use the word change, transform, evolve, expand, become more of, we've got to reform our identity, how we see ourselves. The act of appreciation, and when I talked about that process, appreciation, like a parent, you know, when a child does something good, like we say, oh my God, that's awesome, good job. It's so basic, but our brain receives that as that's not a problem, that's good. I can now move on to the next thing. So for us to reform and believe that we can transform, we've got to know what's good about us and see ourselves differently, right? Because if we live in a critical, just get over it, that's a harsh, critical inner dialogue, a super ego. And so we want to evoke compassion, evoke empathy. And what does that look like when we can't do that? We're like, what's empathy? You can't even believe it. Like, forgive yourself. What's that all about? So when we don't understand that, we can understand appreciation. We can appreciate a flower. We can appreciate sunsets. We can appreciate that we're in this moment observing a sunset. We can feel good. We've got to care about how we feel. Our feelings can fuel us or burn us. So in the process is to help them to, my job is to repeat like a broken record about their character strengths. And I tell them that again and again and again, and I ask them to repeat, what did you just hear me say? Because we may be speaking to them, but their mind may be elsewhere, and anxious and panic thoughts, it's difficult to be present. So what we do is we've got to recognize that the situation sucks. And then, a therapist essentially is a very nurturing parent.
Mm.
And so we nurture them, we acknowledge them, we kind of inform them that this is a safe space, but not just this space, right? That they have within their body character strengths that will protect them. When they are feeling weak and not capable, that's a false belief. Absolutely false belief, and we've got to call them out. And I do that with a very defiant voice, by the way. Like, that is not true. So, and then, as time, the problems, we only see them once a week. So they've got to do the homework to repeat. What did Brian say? Oh, Brian said that I'm a good person. No, I can't believe it right now, but he said so. So, okay, I guess I got to go with that. So once they develop a self-esteem, hence confidence, then they can defy the outside world. Some people have it in them, but when they're so broken, they've got to come back, and we've got to put them back together again and again and again. And through the momentum of consistency, it is a beautiful and a privileged place to be able to observe them becoming more of themselves, to healthily individuate from their circumstances. That it is their
Yeah.
character that defines their destiny now, not their circumstance. The politics do not define their destiny. The economy does not define their destiny. Their trauma doesn't define their destiny. Their character strengths, their healthier beliefs are what define their journey, and they're becoming more of. No more mistakes, only lessons and wisdom. Does that answer the question, I hope?
Oh, I think so. So just to make sure I'm hearing you and the listeners are hearing you correctly, blind hope is truly just wishing on a prayer that something's going to change, like something external to us is going to change. But active hope, if I'm hearing you correctly, is acknowledging what's true in the present, standing firmly in what you want. And is it the self acceptance that changes how you look at yourself and allows yourself to be the person that
Yeah.
can believe and achieve those things?
Yeah, and I just want to be perhaps be corrective of myself when I speak about blind hope. Blind hope is there's hope, by the way, is like a bridge. There's
Okay.
on one, and this bridge of hope, there is doubt, and then there is belief. And so
Hmm.
where are we on this spectrum here, right? And then hope, in regards to blind hope, is like the evidence is right there. You got to pivot. You got to pivot that. Like, for instance, someone could have said to me as a child, "You're never going to be a psychologist. What is that?" And they could have said that to me, and I wouldn't have cared, because in my mind, yeah, so who was I wasn't really. I knew my reality that being a psychologist was not a thing in Malaysia. We didn't even know. I happened to know what it was because it was in an article, and I had to look for an encyclopedia. At that time, there was no Wikipedia. To what is a psychologist? Okay. And so blind hope is when you have the evidence of, I am in a sucky situation, And I'm not doing anything about it. I'm just going to sit here and hope. Active hope is doing something about it. And that could be very as basic as a shift in perception, a tilt. Just just look away from that blurry vision into something that is clearer. Not asking you to do anything else. Just be open to other possibilities. And that's the shift in blind hope to active hope.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just love the way that you are explaining this, not only for the listeners, but for me, full disclosure.
Mm,
Like this is all stuff that I have been blessed to figure out on the fly
mm,
in real time. And I
mm,
know that I earlier in this conversation alluded to this, but probably the lowest, most hopeless point of my adulthood, for
mm,
sure, actually, no probably about it,
mm,
was 2016. I was in New York City doing sales for the New York Yankees. I had tied my entire self-worth and belief about myself to being Stu the sports guy,
mm,
Stu the sports executive, right? And it was super cutthroat, super, like I said, go, 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 do, I'll sleep when I'm dead, all
mm,
that stuff. Literally, my body starts to quit on me from the
mm,
stress.
mm.
I basically get pushed out of the role because I physically could not perform the functions of the job anymore. And I was in the pit of despair for 6 months following leaving the team. And because I had tied so much of my self worth into being the sports executive that I thought I wanted to be, that I had no hope. Talking about that bridge of hope that you shared about, I was so full of doubt. I was running out of money and I couldn't even get myself to update my resume to go find another job. And so I want anybody listening to this conversation, because Brian's been just absolutely dropping wisdom
Mhm.
and nugget after nugget for the last 40 minutes or so. If you find yourself in a place that dark, like there is hope. Like I am now the healthiest I've ever been. I'm married to a woman of my dreams. We have the child of my dreams. I'm pursuing my vocation now, which is not only this podcast, but coaching people on their success, their goals, and their relationships, and having this conversation and connecting folks like Brian to the world so that they can continue to grow their impact as well. And so to answer your question, Brian, like, yeah, I'm just kind of blown away. I think more through your expertise than anything, just how well you are able to speak into this. And I'm curious if there's anything on the subject of developing active hope
Mm.
that we haven't spoken about yet that you feel like the listeners need to hear.
Well, if I have to, I think I'd like to say if there's one thing they can take from our conversation today is to learn to encourage yourself.
Mhm.
When in doubt, what's the next loving thing to do? Which we can't. So from the perspective of self-esteem, and we're feeling so low, we've got to learn to not be critical with ourselves. We've got to learn to empathize and encourage ourselves. And if you don't know how to empathize with yourself, that's fine, but learn to encourage yourself. You can do it. This sucks, but we'll figure it out. We'll be okay. As basic as that, we've got to be, we've got no one else to depend on sometimes except ourselves and our inner dialogue, because our inner dialogue originates from our caregivers and the world that we live in. And if we are using their words and their wisdom to inspire us and all it does is hurts us, then it's us against us, me against me. So if there's one thing to take from this conversation about active hope, to kind of fuel that fervency and resiliency and tenacity, is to learn to encourage yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we're not being our own champion for
Mm,
what we're up to in the world,
mm,
it's hard to inspire other people for our causes, our goals. If we have like career path we want to be on, like Brian has illustrated in his own example. No one else can cheer for us as hard as we can.
Before the Uber became,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in school, and I knew I had to study. I couldn't do the traditional 4 years and like undergrad and grad school. I had to do my undergrad was like in 2.5 years. I had to, because I couldn't just. I had no money. I was dependent on scholarships. So one thing I remember, I used to study. I used to be up studying real late. I only slept for about 3 hours a night. I slept at 2 and I woke up at 5 because I
Wow.
took a lot of credits, 27 credits and all that. So while everyone else was partying, I would be studying. So what I used to do was like, if you need to go to your party and you want to party and you don't want to come back drunk and all that, I'll drive you. Pay me $5. I'll go get you when you're done. So I did Ubering at that time. Sometimes metanoia, the necessary falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we've got to look at what's not working and to clean it up, put ourselves back together. So use your metanoia, use your necessary falling apart, use your tragedies and all that as a way to clean up the parts that are not working out. Discover the untapped resources within you. Put yourself back together and lead a purposeful life.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, y'all. Brian, I know we've been going for a little bit now and we're running a little short on time.
Yeah.
Where can people get in contact with you, continue the conversation, possibly work with you if they're listening to this and are in a place where they feel like they could use your services?
Mm-hmm. So you can reach me at the website is BN Counseling. BN is my initials, Brian Nandy Counseling, because I didn't know what to name my company at that time, and they said, "Well, we'll take your initials," and that's how it goes. So it's BN Counseling, and it's the same BN Counseling. Empower at BN. The email would be empower@bncounseling.com, and the number would be 201-668-1001, or Facebook, Instagram at BN Counseling or Brian Nandy. I may not have should I not have an opening, I have people who work for me who are just wonderful, because I make them take the assessment, and I want to have people who have the same personality type, and then I supervise them and train them in the same kind of modality. Psychoanalysis is the fun, and all the other work that I do. I'll be writing a book next year, a therapeutic book for psychotherapists in regards to some of the modalities that I've used over the years.
And folks, we will be sure to put all of Brian's contact info in the notes, in the description of these episodes as well. So definitely hit him up, continue the conversation with him. If you leave a comment, definitely leave a question for Brian if you have anything. I know this was a super packed episode in terms of just everything that he shared about, and definitely be on the lookout for his TEDx talk as well.
Yeah.
Which I believe should be published here.
So they sent me a thing. So now I know how the cover looks like in that thumbnail. They said in process. I was like, okay, finally, because they've got TEDx. After the edit, whoever edits it, they've got to get their approval at TEDx headquarters, and that's where it's at now. I just received an email this week. It's in process.
That's super exciting. And that is called Active Hope, correct?
Active Hope.
Of course. Of course. So be on the lookout for that, y'all. It should be hitting the airwaves, particularly on YouTube shortly.
Yeah.
Definitely check it out. And so this has been another episode of Your Inside Track to Success. Again, y'all, I am Stuart Krantz. I am your host. Please like, subscribe, leave a review. I know you got something out of this episode. But Brian, the very, very last question I want to ask you, I ask this of all of the guests. What are you acknowledging yourself for today?
I will acknowledge that through active hope, I attract like-minded people and opportunities, abundance, alignment into my life. That has been my story, my reality.
Wow. I love it. Thank you, Brian, for being here today. I acknowledge you for somebody who pushes through all the limiting beliefs, all the external limitations that could have prevented you from creating the life of your dreams. And I know that it is going to serve as inspiration for somebody out there listening to this. And so, folks, thank you for being a part of today's discussion. We will catch you next week.
Thank you.